So I got myself a large format camera. I think we all knew I would end up here eventually. And well, this is mostly a gear test, so I'm just at my local woodlands. And we have this really lovely day. It's bright blue skies. But we photographers love to complain about the weather. So I've been complaining about the gloomy grey skies after winter time here in the south of Sweden. And now, as walking through the woodlands here, I've been muttering about, oh, it's boring blue skies. That's photographers for you. And I've been struggling finding subjects today. I finally found one that I'm somewhat interested in. We have this lovely bent tree, actually two of them, but especially the one on the right. And moving around this subject, a complete 360 degree walking around it. This is probably the best framing I could find. And well, it might work. It's not the perfect image, but it's more of a gear test, so I'm fine with it. I've already metered, set up the composition and focus and everything. I'm just waiting because we have this really annoying hotspot. So I'm hoping the sun will start dipping below the trees over there, so we get a bit more softer light here, so we don't have that annoying hotspot. It's the winter times, even though it's about lunchtime now. I think the sun will start to dip soon. So I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. I do think it is starting to dissipate. So I'm going to take a exposure just to have one image, and then we'll stick around for a couple more minutes and see if it dissipates completely. So let's get to shooting. So I want to shoot this at like f16 or thereabout. Ideally even a small aperture than that, but I think f16 would be okay. And if my metering is correct, that would give me 8 seconds. And I'm shooting Fomapan 100. I didn't realize, but the repository failure of that film is quite bad. So looking at the chart I found online, 8 seconds equals 59 seconds. So large format, why? Isn't that just a big faff? Well, yes it is. It's a bit cumbersome, harder, more challenging. That's what makes it fun. At least what I thought going into this and why I bought a large format camera. Is it as fun as I thought? I do have a confession to make. This is actually my second time out with this camera. I was out yesterday at the same location. I made 2 lovely images, I think. The thing is, I messed up the developing. I ended up with 2 completely blank negatives, or 4 negatives I did, 2 exposures each of each scene. But it was completely blank, not even the markings on the edge of the film, which tells me I messed up the developing and not loading the film. So that happened. Besides that, it is fun shooting large format, thus far. Being very careful, minute about it, having to visualize the subjects before you set up the camera. It's kind of how I like to go about photography anyway. If you watched my previous videos, you knew that. And it is a completely different shooting experience than your typical digital photography, which is kind of why I'm shooting film. So I think it's something I can grow with. The biggest drawback, and the one thing I don't really like, it's a lot dimmer than I expected on the ground glass. Harder to compose and focusing than I had expected. I don't know if you can do anything about that. I read something about a Fresnel glass, a lens, something you put on the ground glass, perhaps a faster lens. I don't know how much difference that does make, but it's just something you have to get used to. I have to do some research there. Besides that, this is a photography genre, if you like, that I see myself growing with and enjoying in the future. Let's see if we can find any more images today. Would be good had at least 2 images. We did find a second image, a final image of the day. I need to get back and get some lunch. I'm starting to get hungry. So we have this really lovely looking pine tree with some really nice structure to the tree trunk itself. Sidelight by the sun, giving it some shape. That's kind of my main subject in this image. But composition has been tricky, and this scene is quite complex. And composing that on a large format camera, well, that's a challenge. I have been cheating today, to be honest. I've been using my digital camera to help me judge compositions today. I need to work out the system to actually be able to judge compositions and pre-visualize images, getting used to the camera, as I have with my Hasselblad. So I need to work on that. So the tree looks nice, then it's trying to arrange it in a nice way. I'm not super fond of this composition. There's a big issue with it. The tree is dead center in the image, kind of blocking your eye. So we'll see if it works, but it's the best I could do, because in the background we have this kind of ugly looking tree, and it's quite bright and distracting, and it's a dead tree and like a stump of a tree, so kind of want to hide those. So this was the best I could do. It's a compromise, but I hope the compromise works. So that's the second and final image with the large format today, and like the first experience with it. And I've been enjoying it. I never told you about the camera though. As you might remember in a previous video, I did tell you that I never got into large format as I didn't have an enlarger for it. Well, if you look at the background of that video, there is a large format enlarger. Thing is, I have had this saved search on like Facebook Marketplace, eBay, and a couple of Swedish sell and buy sites. And finally there was one for sale in my local area. Asking price of 6,000 Swedish crowns, which is this much in a couple of other currencies. Which was a bit rich for me. But then the price was cut to 4,000 a couple of weeks later. And I sent the guy a message. It was January, the poorest month of the year, so I asked, would you consider 3,000? And he agreed. Met a fellow, lovely guy, a fellow photography nerd as myself. Had a lovely little chat, and he told me he was selling a lot of his large format equipment, among others the enlarger and this camera. So we agreed on a price for 8,000 for both the enlarger and the camera. So if you're watching, Javier, thank you. I'll put good use to both of them. But this is actually a Swedish-made camera. It's a Sawbod camera. I might be butchering that name, as it was an immigrant back in the 60s who was an engineer that created this camera. Which ended up selling as a Hasselblad Universal camera. But yeah, it's a lovely wooden camera. And the nice thing is it takes both the 9 by 12 centimeters format, which is a European standard, as well as 4 by 5 inches. And I did put on my spending trousers and added on a couple of accessories, among others dark cloth from Intrepid. But perhaps more importantly, I did spend some money on a new spot meter, a Minolta spot meter M, to help me in my analog photography. I've been using a Pentax in the past, which works well enough, but it is kind of heavy. This is a bit smaller, a bit lighter, and it can stand up in my bag, taking substantially less room. But even more importantly, it has a fast readout, helping me judge scenes and being able to survey the whole scene. In a video a couple of weeks ago, I kind of messed up quite badly with exposure. The second image of those messed up images would have been really nice if the exposure was there, so I hope this will help me. So that's it. I'm going to head back to the car. It's time for some lunch. I'll see you in the next one. Do take care and bye.